Commander Vexthor stood frozen in the observation deck, his 3 eyes wide with an emotion his species had no word for. Below him, through the reinforced viewing panel, the human captives had turned his state-of-the-art detention facility into a war zone. The Krillian Empire had studied Earth for 6 cycles before making contact. They had watched the humans build, trade, and occasionally squabble amongst themselves. To the Krillians, a species that had evolved on a peaceful world with no natural predators and abundant resources, humans seemed like perfect subjects for annexation. Soft. Manageable. Harmless. They were catastrophically wrong. The invasion had started well enough. The Krillian fleet descended upon a small research station in the Arctic, capturing 15 humans without resistance. Vexthor had expected fear, perhaps some primitive attempts at negotiation. What he got instead was something his military training had never prepared him for. The first incident occurred in the medical bay. A young human male, barely into adulthood, had been placed on an examination table. The moment the restraints loosened, he hadn't run or cowered. He had grabbed the nearest surgical instrument and, with movements that seemed impossibly fluid, disabled 3 guards before security could flood the room with sleep gas. The precision was disturbing. The speed was terrifying. Commander, his second officer, Thalen, approached nervously. The humans in Detention Block 7 have fashioned weapons from their meal trays. Weapons? Vexthor's translator struggled with the concept. From feeding implements? They've sharpened the edges using friction against the wall. 2 guards are in the medical unit. Vexthor watched the security feeds in growing horror. The humans weren't just fighting, they were adapting. They had identified weak points in the cell structure within hours. They had established a communication system using rhythmic tapping. They had organized themselves into a hierarchy without speaking a single word. One human, a female with gray-streaked hair who had introduced herself as a retired teacher, had somehow picked the electronic lock on her cell using a wire from her clothing. She was now systematically releasing others, moving with the efficiency of a trained operative. Perhaps, Thalen suggested, his voice trembling, we underestimated their military personnel. Vexthor pulled up the captives' files. A teacher. A chef. An engineer. A farmer. 2 students. A musician. None were soldiers. None had formal combat training according to their records. Yet they moved like warriors who had spent lifetimes preparing for this exact scenario. The Krillian commander's mind raced back to the intelligence reports. Humans evolved on a death world, the reports had mentioned. Apex predators, extreme weather, resource competition, disease. For millions of years, every single human ancestor had to fight, hide, outsmart, or outrun something trying to kill them. Those who couldn't died before reproducing. The implications crystallized with terrifying clarity. Every human alive was the descendant of survivors. Not just survivors, winners. Their entire species had been forged in the crucible of constant mortal danger. Aggression, tactical thinking, improvisation, and the ability to turn anything into a weapon weren't skills they learned. These traits were woven into their genetic code. Commander. A panicked voice crackled over the comm, they've breached Detention Block 7. They're heading toward the armory. Vexthor's blood went cold. If the humans reached the weapons cache, every ship in the fleet would be at risk. These weren't the sophisticated energy weapons his people used, but projectile throwers, crude, loud, and apparently perfectly suited to human psychology. Evacuate the facility, Vexthor ordered, his voice hollow. Prepare the fleet for emergency departure. Sir. We're abandoning the mission. We're not abandoning it. We're surviving it. Vexthor looked at the screens one last time. The teacher was now leading a squad of humans through the corridors with tactical precision, using hand signals she couldn't possibly have known officially. Send a priority message to the Krillian High Command. Earth is not to be approached. Humans are not a primitive species waiting for uplift. They're a warrior race that happened to develop philosophy and art between wars. As the Krillian ships powered up their engines, racing away from Earth's solar system, Vexthor understood the terrible truth. Humanity hadn't been hiding their nature. They had been restraining it. And the Krillian Empire had just learned what happens when you give them a reason to stop.